Assalamu alaikum students. Today we are going to do a second part of politics and the English language. That is the essay written by George Orwell. And in this part, we are going to talk about George Orwell's analysis of bad language. To support his argument that modern language is deteriorating, George Orwell examines several examples of contemporary prose. He demonstrates that many writers fail to communicate effectively because they depend on worn-out expressions, inflated vocabulary, and vague language rather than precise thought. The thought is not precise. According to Orwell, bad writing is rarely the result of a lack of intelligence. It is usually the result of habit, laziness, and a desire to sound impressive rather than clear. We don't want clarity. We want to show off that how much we know, what kind of language we use, flowery language we can use. We have got very strong high-fi vocabulary. Orwell identifies four major features of bad writing. These linguistic habits weaken communication, obscure meaning, and make manipulation easier. Let's discuss them one by one. First one is dying metaphors. A dying metaphor is a figure of speech that creates a comparison and produces a vivid image in the reader's mind. Effective metaphors help readers understand ideas in fresh and imaginative ways. However, Orwell argues that many metaphors become so overused that they lose their original force and meaning. He calls these expressions dying metaphors. If you see the examples, to toe the line, ride roughshod over, ring the changes, no axe to grind, fishing in troubled waters. These phrases were once powerful and imaginative, but frequent repetition has turned them into cliches. Writers often use them automatically without considering what they actually mean. So, what criticism Orwell does here or offers here? According to Orwell, the problem is not merely stylistic. When writers rely on ready-made metaphors, they avoid the effort of creating precise and original expressions. Instead of thinking actively, they borrow familiar phrases from others. So consequently, language becomes mechanical and thought becomes passive. The writer is no longer communicating a unique idea, but simply repeating a verbal formula. Why this is dangerous? That is the question he is considering. Dying metaphors encourage intellectual laziness. They make you lazy. They make you lazy. They allow people to write without fully engaging with their subject. Since the phrases are already familiar, writers may not even notice that they are using them. This habit gradually weakens originality, creativity, and clarity of thought. Overall, Orwell does not oppose figurative language itself. In fact, he recognizes that fresh metaphors can enrich writing and make ideas memorable. His criticism is directed specifically at dead or worn out metaphors that have become cliches. He wants writers to use imagery consciously rather than mechanically. So, the major theme that he considers here is that mental laziness and a loss of originality can be found while using cliches. Dying metaphors reveal Orwell's larger concern that people often allow language to think for them. Instead of choosing words carefully, they repeat inherited expressions, which reduces both linguistic and intellectual independence. Second point is operators are verbal false limbs. What are they? Orwell uses the unusual term operators are verbal false limbs. What does it mean? Basically, he uses this unusual term to describe unnecessarily long phrases that replace simple and direct verbs. We also do the same, isn't it? Instead of expressing an action clearly, writers often use complicated constructions that add words without adding meaning. Let's take examples. Instead of writing decide, writers write arrive at a decision. Instead of writing destroy, the writers write give rise to the destruction of. Instead of writing consider, what writers write, they give consideration to. Okay? Then instead of using improve, they write affect and improvement in. So instead of using very common vocabulary, they are using longer expressions. When you have very common word, why are you using these long expressions just to show off? These expressions make prose longer, heavier, and less energetic. The simple verb is replaced by a combination of nouns and auxiliary verbs, which create unnecessary complexity. Direct language is replaced by bureaucratic language. For Orwell, good writing should be economical, using less words, should not be verbose. Every unnecessary word weakens the sentence and distracts the reader from the central idea. The question is why writers use them. The answer is many writers believe that longer expressions sound more educated, more professional, more authoritative. Orwell argues that this is an illusion, a mirage. Such phrases often conceal weak thinking behind a facade of sophistication. They also say that it is politically significant too. Governments and bureaucracies frequently use verbal false limbs because they make statements appear formal and official. The extra words create distance between the speaker and reality. For example, instead of saying that a government failed, officials may speak of a failure in the implementation process. So, what critical insight we get here? Orwell's criticism reflects his belief that simplicity is not a sign of ignorance, but a sign of intellectual discipline. Clear writers choose the shortest expression that accurately conveys meaning. Conveying meaning is the most important thing. So you should use simple words. Don't make things difficult for the readers, for others. So here the major theme that has been discussed, that is simplicity and artificial complexity are in contrast. They are in conflict with each other. So if you consider its broader significance, the use of verbal false limbs demonstrates how a language can become detached from reality. Instead of clarifying ideas, language becomes a barrier between thought and expression. It brings hurdles. Third one is pretentious dictions. Another major problem identified by Orwell is pretentious diction, the use of unnecessarily grand, formal, or foreign sounding words to impress readers. There are so many examples. Instead of using the very simple word help, we writers write or say render assistance. Use is replaced by utilize. Start is used by commence and is replaced by terminate. How Orwell criticizes, we also do the same, isn't it? We also find difficult words, whereas we have very simple words for usage. So pretentious diction, Orwell says this, pretentious diction often serves to no communicative purpose. Writers select complicated words not because they are more accurate, but because they sound more important. It looks that they are important. They're more significant. This creates an artificial style that separates language from ordinary experience. So the question is why writers use it? Why writers do that? What they want to achieve? Many writers fear that simple language will make them appear less educated, that they are not educated, that they don't know the language. So consequently, they substitute ordinary words with elaborate vocabulary in order to project intelligence, expertise, or authority. Orwell argues it. He says that this habit reflects insecurity rather than sophistication. It also has political significance. Pretentious diction is particularly useful in politics because it creates distance between leaders and the public. Leaders can use such kind of words, not the public. Complicated language can make policies sound impressive while hiding their real consequences. Harsh realities are disguised beneath technical or formal vocabulary. For example, a government may describe poverty as an economic adjustment challenge rather than addressing the suffering directly. What critical insight we get from here? Orwell's criticism is democratic in spirit. He believes that language should be accessible to ordinary people. Everyone should be able to understand it, even he's educated or not. That is the main purpose of communication. Language becomes effective. When language becomes excessively formal, it often serves the interest of power rather than truth. It also divides the society into different parts, into different classes. The major theme we can get here is that language is a tool of power and prestige. Pretentious diction illustrates how language can become a status symbol. Instead of communicating ideas clearly, it is used to establish authority and social superiority. Fourth and the last one is meaningless words. Orwell's final category consists of words whose meanings have become so vague and flexible that they can be used in almost in any situation. That is the problem, right? So, do we do the same thing? I think we also do the same thing. Let's find certain examples like democracy, like fascism, freedom, justice, equality, patriotism, progress. These are the words that can be used anywhere in any situation. These words often carry strong emotional appeal, yet different people define them in completely different ways. Our argument is that because these terms lack precise definitions, they can be manipulated easily. Anyone can use it in any situation, can find or can give his or her own meaning to those words. Speakers use them to gain approval without explaining exactly what they mean. A politician may praise democracy or freedom, but listeners may interpret these words differently. Agreement before Agreement, therefore, becomes superficial rather than genuine. The question is why it is dangerous. Meaningless words create the illusion of communication while concealing disagreement and confusion. People may believe they share the same values, but they use the same words because they are using the same words. And when they are using the same words, it means they have the same values, even though they attach entirely different meanings to them. What is the political significance of it? This category is particularly important to Orwell's political argument. Politicians often rely on emotionally charged but undefined language because such words generate support without requiring clear explanations. Words become tools of persuasion rather than tools of truth. Orwell does not claim that these words are inherently meaningless. He does not say that. Rather, he argues that they become meaningless when speakers fail to define them clearly. So what solution he provides? He says that its solution is precision. Writers and politicians should explain exactly what they mean instead of relying on emotionally attractive slogans. So, this fourth kind, what it does, it creates ambiguity, it becomes a source of manipulation, and with the help of these words, what we can do, we can abuse the language. Language can be abused. So, what broader significance it has? Meaningless words demonstrate how language can be used to shape public opinion while avoiding accountability. They reveal Orwell's fear that vague language enables political deception and weakens democratic debate. We use such kind of vague language to deceive people, to make debate weaker. We don't let it make strong to become, we don't let it become stronger. We don't strengthen it. So let me critically analyze it in a few words, and then we will finish this lecture. So see, through these four categories, dying metaphors, verbal false lambs, pretentious diction, and meaningless words, Orwell is demonstrating that bad writing is not merely a stylistic flaw. It is evidence of intellectual carelessness. And it can become a powerful instrument of political manipulation. His analysis suggests that language deteriorates when writers stop thinking critically and begin relying on cliches, unnecessary complexity, and vague terminology. Such language distances people from reality and makes them more vulnerable to propaganda. Therefore, Orwell's critique of bad writing is ultimately a defense of clarity, honesty, independent thought, and intellectual responsibility. I hope you have understood it. Here we are going to stop it, and in the next lecture, we'll continue it. Thank you for watching.